Okay. Welcome, everyone. Good evening, good afternoon, wherever you're tuning in from. Welcome. We're going to go back one slide just to set it off properly. But again, we welcome you all to the Mentoring and Black Youth Mentoring and Mental Health Forum. We are excited to be with you all on this beautiful Thursday, unseasonably warm 2022. We are excited to have partnered with the Black Mental Health Alliance to bring you all this conversation and convening this evening. Okay, next slide. As we know, we also are excited to bring you all greetings and glad tidings from Black History Month as well. As we well know, this month, this like historic gathering, right? It started many years ago by Dr. Carter G. Woodson, and I was actually reminded via one of my close colleagues the other day. One of the most important things for us to remember about Black History Month is that this originally started off not as an opportunity for us to take this month to learn about the contributions of Black Americans to this country and this sort of body of work called Black history, but rather it started off as the tradition was for us to share during this month all that we had learned about Black history and the contributions of Black people throughout the year. This was our opportunity to share what we had learned. So I really want us to sort of think about that and ruminate on exactly what Black History Month actually means to us and how we intend to carry that forward. I also want to just thank everybody for your energy, your passion, and your presence, and all that you're going to bring to the conversation this evening. This is an incredibly important discussion and one that, as Mentor Maryland, DC, we are absolutely committed to continue to bring you all programming and conversations and convenings like this one around really important and relevant topics, especially those that center the voices of those who are traditionally marginalized or otherized. In this case, today's conversation is really centering around racial equity and the conversation around youth mental health. And we have an express interest this evening in having a conversation around what mental health looks like for Black youth, for whom many of our organizations primarily serve. So we're really excited about today's conversation. And again, we just welcome you all and are excited about this energy. And to help us get in the proper frame, I'm excited to bring on a little earlier. Oh, we got to introduce ourselves really quickly. I'm Sadiq. I know a lot of you all. I'm really excited to be with you all. I'm the executive director of Mentor Maryland, DC, and I'm joined by my amazing colleague, and we're serving as your co-host tonight, Renee.
Hi, everyone. Renee Angela Mock, Program Outreach Support Manager for the Greater Maryland region here at Mentor Maryland, DC. Happy to see everyone here and people from places that I've been as well. So thank you for joining us.
Awesome. Let's go to the next slide. And to help us get in the right frame of mind, we are going to bring on early. We're going to hear from this sister a couple of times this evening, but I'm really excited to bring her to the fore to help us get grounded in this conversation, because as we know, this is a serious conversation and I want us to all be present. We know this is the end of a long day, which is again, even why we're even more appreciative of you all's time and presence and energy, but we want to make sure that we're grounded and have the right frame of mind and are bringing the right energy to this conversation. So Janine is actually going to lead us in an exercise to make sure that we're grounded and present for the conversation. Janine, you with us?
Yes, I am here. All right. Hello, everyone. How's everyone doing? You could put a thumbs up or something in the chat. How's everyone doing? Good. Beautiful. So I'm Janine, and I am a consultant with Black Mental Health Alliance. But before we get into that, I just think that it's important to just center ourselves. How many of you are familiar with a concept called present-centered living? I see a hand go up. I like to hold space and see if someone will put something in the chat. Not until you share it, okay. All right. So I actually, just in full transparency, I came across this as I've been migrating through my own wellness journey. And so present-centered living is just tapping into your senses. And when it was first introduced to me, it was listing the different things that I can hear, but I decided to add to it things that I am able to hear. So I would invite you to just plant yourself in your chair, your space, or if you're sitting on the floor, wherever you are, if you're standing in your kitchen cooking dinner, plant yourself there, and just walk through the prompts. So the first thing I would invite you to acknowledge, whether you put it in the chat or you hold it for yourself, 5 things that you can hear or are able to hear. And the able to speaks to the infinite possibilities beyond where you are. Okay. So the next one is 4 things that you can see or are able to see. And it doesn't have to be tangible, it could be abstract. You can even see into your future. You can see greatness. You can see yourself being successful. So I want to invite you all to acknowledge that, to call that to your acknowledgement and remembrance. Take a deep breath, release. And then we're going to go to 3 things that you can smell or are able to smell. And just be reminded that it's less about sharing it in this space and more of an acknowledgement within yourself to help ground yourself. The next thing are 2 things that you can touch or are able to touch. Remember, the able to is speaking to the possibilities beyond the given moment. And then finally, 1 thing that you can taste or are able to taste. And again, the whole goal with this was to allow yourself to be fully present. Some of us have probably spent all day in front of the computer, or ripping and running, maybe picking up your children or taking care of loved ones, or even parents. So I just wanted to invite us to just be present in this moment, and all that it encompasses. So thank you all.
No, thank you. Thank you so much, Janine. If we can just drop a 1, if that resonated for you, drop a 1 in the chat box. Let us know that you're with us. Let us know if that resonated for you. Again, just helping to get your mind right, helping to get you in the proper frame of mind and reference for the conversation for this evening. Thank you all. Thank you all so much. I also think that that's a wonderful activity as we're talking about mental health. A huge component of that is being present, right? And being aware of our own state of being and our own state of mind. So, what better way to center us than on this conversation than to put some of that in practice and put it in action. Next slide. So a little bit about our agenda, pretty straightforward for this evening. Again, we're excited. We're going to give you all some context. We've already welcomed everybody into the space, but we're excited to be able to provide some context for how this conversation came about. We're also going to be hearing from, again, our colleagues, our family over at Black Mental Health Alliance to give us an overview of mental health first responders, which is a powerful concept. We're also going to hear a bit of an overview from the Healing Youth Alliance about their work and for them to be able to give us an overview, which you all are going to be blown away by. We're going to do a little bit of breakout room reflection, where then we're going to jump into, so don't leave after the breakout room, because y'all know how it is. After breakout rooms and after breaks, people normally break out. So we're inviting y'all to stay for the entire duration of the program. Again, we will be taking a short break before the panel discussion. But again, don't break out after the breakout room. We have an amazing conversation with some amazing panelists, one of which you just heard from, Janine. And again, we're going to be having what we hope is going to be an impactful and thoughtful conversation. And then again, we want to invite you all into that conversation as well, which you'll hear from in a second. Keep your thoughts, your comments, your questions coming in that chat box. We're going to share some resources, and then we're going to wrap up with our evaluation and what's next in the conversation. So again, welcome to everybody. And then, some norms. I lifted this from one of our colleagues, right? So you got your Zoom norms. This is everybody's 11 millionth, webinar or online meeting at this point. Hopefully everybody got, they kind of got the mute button, solid. Okay. Like if you're not talking, please keep yourself on mute, I don't really know what else to say there. We invite you, into the conversation, but please use the chat box. Please do so, when we invite you in. Please be respectful, supportive, and inquisitive. Somebody might say something in the chat box that doesn't necessarily make sense to you in your current state. That's okay. But we want to try our best to be respectful and supportive in our inquiries, in our questioning, right? And to leave sort of judgment outside of this space, which leads us into space and grace. Our team is going to make a mistake. You're going to hear somebody in this panel tonight or somebody share some information. They're going to misspeak. Give them the benefit of the doubt. We're here because we shared a common thread, hopefully, that we want to see young people win. Hopefully that's our common thread, which unites us tonight from Indiana to North Carolina to DC to PG, right here in Baltimore. We want to see young people win. So let's give each other space and grace and an opportunity to grow. And again, listen for the one thing that you can take and better yourself or your practice throughout this process. Again, just give me a 1 in the chat box if y'all are with us. Okay. That's also to make sure that folks are awake. Okay, so with that, I'm excited to pass it back to my colleague, Renee, to give us some additional context for how we wound up here in this conversation for this evening. Renee?
Thank you. Hey, everyone, I'm back. The context for kind of how we got here on the Mentor Maryland DC side. So if you're not aware, in September, the Surgeon General released a state of youth mental health release based on research and a concern that youth mental health are in crisis. And actually I'd been on a webinar, a Zoom, and someone had said that there's a youth mental health crisis. And I was like, what? And then I Googled that, and then the Surgeon General's release came up. And I brought it to my colleagues, and we knew that this was of the utmost importance. This is the population that we aim to serve through you all, serving you guys to serve them. So it was important to us to figure out the most meaningful way to have that conversation. And we invited, our friends from Black Mental Health Alliance to be here and to be our co-sponsor, as well as the Y, which also is co-sponsoring our trainings this spring. And we think this is an important conversation, and we're thrilled that so many people are here right now. So I hope that some of the information that I'll share from that report will kind of put us on the same playing field to have this discussion and do some of that brainstorming and ideating on what we can do about this concern. So this is a graphic. So Sadiq did drop the link to the PDF of the mental health advisory, and this is directly from there. So something to think about when we think about what affects mental health, specifically for young people. And I love this graphic. I think it's so useful. And I think it would even be useful for a youth to look at, right? We're talking from the individual, the family, community, environment, society, all these influences on what we know. And as young youth development practitioners, that these are the factors that are either protective factors and keep our youth safe and help them reach those positive outcomes, or they can be risk factors. And that at every level, it could be a protective factor or a risk factor. And for many of you and for many programs, you're there to be that intervention to eliminate those risks and to add more protective factors, into our young people's lives. So mental health is directly in there. And again, this conversation today is for us to consider what is our role in doing it. So for us, we might be in that community space for youth. If you are a program with a physical, a physical space, that's an environment. We're part of this larger society and how we speak and talk about youth. So we have a lot of opportunity, again, to kind of increase those protective factors and hopefully protect, our young people's mental health. So identified in the report by the Surgeon General, who's at higher risk. Because again, it's Black History Month. This is very purposeful. And we know that, our young Black youth are more at risk for mental health challenges. Specifically during the pandemic, some other groups that were identified, youth with intellectual and developmental disabilities. My husband's a special ed teacher. It's been a very tough time these past few years with all these disruptions with school. He has a breakdown here of the different experiences of different minority groups with the COVID-19 pandemic, and particularly for Black youth. They're more likely than other youth to lose a parent or caregiver. I recently heard that for 1 in 4 COVID deaths is one child losing a parent. And again, Black youth are disproportionately covered in that number, and that is terrible. That is grief, is a huge part of mental health, and if that's not being addressed, you know, that's why we're here today, to figure that out. LGBT youth are more at risk, of course. I was in at the National Mentoring Summit. If anybody was there, give a shout in the chat. But I went to their webinar at LGBT youth, and their approach was that because in general and throughout this report, you'll see as well, LGBT youth are more at risk of suicide. So if you're working with LGBT youth, essentially you're working in suicide prevention, and approaching the work that way is even more important and meaningful. And really the purpose of this is to see, again, where is our role in having those protective factors and ensuring that our youth have mental health to carry them through life safely and as best as possible. So I'm sure no one's surprised by any of these facts on the screen and in the report, but it's just a matter of it. You know, we're at a crisis level at this point. So of course we're here to talk about, you know, what are we to do about it? What's wonderful about this report is that it has specific action items for different kinds of groups, for educators, for parents, for doctors, for politicians. And for us, for, you know, community organizations, these were kind of the things that stood out the most about what is the possibility of where we can have influence, positive influence on our young people's mental health. So to start, you know, educating the public, whoever our audience is, wherever we have outreach, about the importance of mental health. And again, the reason we're hosting this today, reducing negative stereotypes, bias, and stigma around mental illness. Where we're able to host those conversations, we want to host those conversations. That's why we're here today, and we hope that when you go, you know, from this Zoom to your own communities, that you're able to carry that work out as well. Implementing evidence-based programs that promote healthy development, support children, youth, their families, and increase their resilience. We talked a lot about, you know, different youth development approaches, different approaches for parents, all those different kinds of things that we do professional development on. I want to give you guys access to that information. We want to ensure that what we're doing, that there's evidence that says it's going to have that positive outcome, and again, those protective factors for youth. Ensure that programs are evaluating mental health related outcomes. Is your program tracking, you know, the mental health of your students in a way that not just around the kind of negative outcomes, anxiety, depression, or at risk of suicide, but what are those protective factors that are protecting youth mental health? And how are you ensuring and keeping track that your program is providing those things to young people? That will only make your program, you know, more powerful and hopefully impactful. And then again, today, we're doing this, addressing the unique mental health needs of at-risk youth, racial and ethnic minorities, LGBT youth, and youth with disabilities. These are youth that we know that are already overlooked. I mean, largely in the youth development space overall, but specifically, when we're talking about mental health, we know that they're more at risk, and that, you know, being here today, I hope you are here because you're ready to do that stepping up and that addressing of the issue. So I'm going to pass it now to Sadiq to introduce Black Mental Health Alliance. We're transitioning into the Black Mental Health Alliance to talk about the mental health first responders. So I'm going to hand it over. And just tell me to click next slide when you want me to click the next slide. There you go.
It's me. Oh, okay. I thought you said Sadiq, so I wasn't sure. Hello again, everyone. As I stated earlier, my name is Janine. My colleague, Nia Jones, she serves as the lead consultant for the Youth and College Division at Black Mental Health Alliance. She's not able to join the call. She might hop on a little bit later, but you know, so she's not able to join us this evening. But I appreciate her so much and all that she brings to what Black Mental Health Alliance does and how we support the youth. So she's a phenomenal visionary. We could go to the next slide. Yes, Camry, at Young Black Minds Matter. Yes. So who is Black Mental Health Alliance for Education and Consultation? So we were founded in 1984 by Dr. Maxie T. Collier, a social worker, Dr. Workner, Mr. Workner, and another co-founder was Senator Shirley Nathan Pulliam. And so it really came about when they were noticing just alarming trends regarding suicidal ideations and other things that were plaguing the Black community, inequitabilities regarding access to mental health and wellness support. And so the goal was to formulate culturally relevant approaches to develop and the maintenance of health and mental health services for Black people and vulnerable populations. And so it started about 40 years ago, and they have been doing phenomenal work in Baltimore. They do trainings, we do community conversations, and we just work to support the mental health and wellness for people in a way that doesn't objectify them and that really allows them a space and an opportunity to heal, not just for themselves, but throughout their community and generationally. So you can go to the next slide. So as it was stated earlier, the purpose of today is to talk about mental health and wellness and the supports for Black individuals, right? And so sometimes things will get lifted up that we might not agree with. We might see it through a different lens. We might believe that we're well past something, right? Simply because it isn't named a certain way anymore. But I wanted to share 4 agreements of courageous conversation. And this was introduced to me when I was a student at the School of Social Work. I was actually studying with the Positive School Center. And so this was something that came up during one of the trainings. So 4 agreements of courageous conversation: stay engaged, speak your truth, experience discomfort, and the last one at the bottom is expect and accept non-closure. So I want to invite you all, because I am like a call to response kind of person, you could use the chat. Put in there one of these agreements that you're willing to hold on to in this space. Stay engaged. Okay. Experience discomfort, okay? Stay engaged, experience discomfort. Speaking my truth, beautiful. Expect and accept non-closure, beautiful. 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 Okay, awesome. All right. So, and not only in this space, but even as you go throughout the rest of your evening and then even tomorrow, right? To just find an agreement of courageous conversation you'll hold on to. All right, we can go to the next slide. So let's start with what is mental health. So according to the World Health Organization, it is a state of well-being in which the individual realizes his or her own abilities, can cope with the normal stresses of life, can work productively and fruitfully, and is able to make a contribution to his or her community. So because we're talking about the mental health and wellness and supports for individuals who have youth who are Black, we realize that there are certain things that impede or limit that ability for many individuals. So I would invite some people to maybe, how many of you have acknowledged that some of the youth that you work with, along your journey, you realize that maybe they don't realize their own potential. They're not able to cope with the normal stresses of life. And what is deemed a normal stressor of life? And what has become a normal stressor of life? And is it normal to have to cope with abnormal things that are not common for other people? So I decided that I wanted to approach this part of the conversation on how to support mentoring providers more from a macro as opposed to a micro. We can say, as my grandmother would say, till the cows come home, what needs to be done as far as connecting with a therapist, making sure that someone does see a therapist. But we also have to acknowledge that there are some things that really do create barriers for people's lives in order to realize your own potential, to cope with the normal stresses of life. Is it normal to have to cope with abnormal things? Yes, yes. So I wanted us to just take a look at this definition, and I italicized a few portions of it because I thought it would be important for us to hold on to those things as we begin to really reflect on what it means for Black youth to be able to be healthy, whole, and well and what things attempt to interrupt that. So if we could go to the next slide. So socially engineered traumas. How I came to this part was I wanted us to realize and acknowledge that there are some things, not just traumatic lived experiences, but socially engineered traumas that really do interrupt many of our youth and our ability to cope with the normal stresses of life, to realize our own potential. And what socially engineered traumas are, they are experiences that are steeped and rooted in inequitabilities and oppression. And they need to be distinguished between typical traumas in life. So if you all could just name, just put in the chat, what are some typical traumatic experiences in life, right? It could be the loss of a loved one. It could be the loss of a dog, right? And I'll hold space in case someone wanted to put something in there. Yes, someone put loss, okay. Yes, okay. Divorce, yes. Abuse, bullying, removed from home. So when someone put removed from home, or food insecurity, yes, or food apartheid, right? Those political efforts to keep certain communities and groups of people from having access, not only to food, but quality food and being able to afford what is in that community. Policing as trauma, over-policing, yes, poverty. But the socially engineered part of that is whether or not certain communities are not afforded maybe business opportunities over others, right? And further leading to poverty in their community. Displacement, absolutely. Another big one that I think really truly plagues many youth is adultification. How many of you are familiar with that? And I can't see everyone, so if you could, maybe raise a hand or put in the chat. Yes, okay. So with adultification, it is often we saw this with the youth that were wrongfully charged with assaulting a white woman in New York, and who did between, 6 to 13 years in prison. We also see adultification of young Black girls. Maybe they're deemed as being too sassy, right? We also see how that has implications not only for how they are penalized in school or the punishment, but I would invite us all as service providers to acknowledge how the adultification of Black children, Black bodies, really shapes whether or not children are unenrolled from our mentoring programs, whether or not they are subjugated to access to resources. And I would also like for us to factor in how colorism might play a part in that as well. Perhaps maybe you are a little nicer to a fair complexion Black child as opposed to a more melanated rich Black child. So the reason why I decided to put the definition of mental health up there was because for us to also acknowledge that there's socially engineered traumas, not just traumatic lived experiences. All of us are subjugated to traumatic lived experiences, but some of us, unfortunately, are subjugated to socially engineered traumas that make it more difficult to get to that finish line or that checkpoint of living a fruitful and healthier life. Okay, we could go to the next slide. So I wasn't going to be before you all long because, like I said, my approach in this part of the conversation was to address it more from like a macro and systemic level. You want to know how we can do better as service providers, the human service profession, and how we service Black youth, then we have to look at the larger structures that are creating these socially engineered traumas for their lives and inhibiting their ability to be healthy, whole, and well. And so while I was doing some reading and reflecting, I thought this was a powerful quote, and I'll read it. The Negro's great stumbling block in his stride towards freedom is not the white citizen's counselor or the Ku Klux Klaner, but the white moderate who is more devoted to order than to justice. And so my call to action for you all with this quote is to examine whether or not your program's policies and actual practices, because sometimes our policies differ from our practices, are more committed to order than to justice. if they are committed in moving towards the justice, then you will truly begin to address those systemic issues within your program that are inhibiting a young child's ability to be healthy, whole, and to succeed, and really to feel affirmed in who they are. And the other thing that I wanted to bring up with the socially engineered traumas is that they lead to the dehumanization of an individual. And if you feel dehumanized or devalued, then you're more likely to, there's an onset for depression, there's an onset for anxiety, there's an onset for obsessive compulsive disorder, as well as suicide, unfortunately, suicidal ideation and attempts. And so that's what I wanted to bring before you today. And I think the next slides are just some recommended readings that I have found beneficial along my journey. So I want to yield my time to the phenomenal Healing Youth Alliance for them to share with you all as well. Thank you. Yes, and these are some resources. So if you want to, you have a young person that might want to connect with a therapist, BMHA has a database of a lot of mental health providers. And so if you scan that QR code, you fill out that confidential form, a member of the team will follow up within about 24 to 48 hours with 3 possible options. And the purpose with that is because it can be overwhelming if you're not accustomed to seeing a therapist, or you might need to find someone new, right? And it can be overwhelming just trying to Google and navigate calling your insurance company. This will hopefully give you a jump start for 3. And in full transparency, in my life, I had gave this resource to someone and encouraged both parents to do this. So if one gets 3 and the other gets 3, now you have possibly 6 people to jumpstart your search. So I just wanted to share that with you all. And thank you all for your time.
Powerful, powerful, powerful. Again, please show some love in the chat box for Janine, who again just really gave us some amazing pieces to think about. And again, I hope we're taking notes. That's what this conversation is for, y'all. Please make sure you're taking notes. So up next, we're gonna bring to the front of the stage, the virtual stage, the amazing team from Healing Youth Alliance. So tell us a little bit, let's spotlight them. Boom, yes. So we're gonna do that. Hold on now, somebody gotta help me. We're gonna bring all these wonderful, we got Taylor, we got Ania. Let's see, add, hold on, we fixing this. We told y'all space and grace. Okay, there's one more. So something just happened. We're getting there. All right, I'm gonna ask Renee to fix the spotlights. Healing Youth Alliance team, y'all with us?
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yeah, we here.
Awesome. So the floor is you all's. Please just signal to Renee as we get through the slides, and please take it away.
So, hey y'all, my name is Ania McNair. I am an OG ambassador with Healing Youth Alliance, and I'm also with some of my teammates, Alda and Taylor. So we want to say, who is Healing Youth Alliance? So Healing Youth Alliance is a youth organization focused on increasing awareness of mental health and decreasing the stigma related to accessing mental health resources. We also prepare youth to be peer educated trainers and consultants for youth serving organizations and governmental entities. We have a partnership established in March 2020 between Heart Smiles, Black Mental Health Alliance, and the University of Maryland School of Social Work.
And before we move on, like she said, my name is Elder, and I'm 20 years old. I'm also on the Men's Trauma Informed Care Task Force. Taylor and I are also, like Ania, OG Healing Youth Alliance ambassadors and Heartbeats too. We've been in this program for March 2020 when we started. It's been 2 years, almost 2 years next month. So we've been doing this for 2 years, and I'm gonna let Taylor introduce herself now.
Hey everyone. So like Elder and both Ania and Elder said, I'm also OG ambassador. I'm also a 20-year-old entrepreneur. I'm the CEO of the Graphic Geek, where I specialize in graphic designing. I'm also in multiple youth organizations, youth-led, for the youth, by the youth, organizations that all pertain to helping my community. And I'm happy to be here to talk about Healing Youth Alliance and also bring awareness to mental health specifically, and how it shows up in and around youth.
Okay, so the Healing Youth Alliance process, like how do we do it? So one, we need youth, right? So we recruit youth from all over Baltimore City, and I now believe we're moving forward to Baltimore County as well. And so each youth will have a Heart Smiles professional development workshop, and that will be 4 weeks. And the Black Mental Health Alliance training, I think that was my personal favorite. I learned a whole lot from the Black Mental Health Alliance. And then, of course, we had the practice conference and then professional development training. And then, of course, this is when you see all the beautiful youth and what they learned, and they get to share with y'all. And that's the final conference.
Yeah, I know that might have been a lot, but basically, she broke it down pretty easy. We find youth, any youth who's interested. So if you're interested in mental health, even if you're not interested in mental health and you just want to know more about mental health because you've seen how it affects the people in your community, this is also the group for you. Then, like she said, the Heart Smiles professional development is just so that you can understand how to become a leader if you're not already, just the certain skills that it's going to take in order for you to be a Healing Youth Alliance ambassador. So before we just throw you in, we give you a little bit of skills, a little bit of practice before you get in and let you know what the expectations are. And then the 10-week training, like she said, that's the most important part, what we learn from the social workers from University of Maryland, and they train us and they tell us everything we need to know about mental health, especially in the Black community. And not just mental health, but we also talk about historical trauma, things like that, and things that really affect Black people at the core. And the practice conference is just where we practice what we're doing so that the youth can get comfortable presenting, comfortable with the content. And then the final conference is when we show off what we did, like she said.
Okay, so opportunities since graduating from Healing Youth Alliance. So approximately we had about 1,000 people have attended conferences that we have held across the country, which I find that's totally amazing because that's pretty dope for real. Like, anyway, I think that's dope. Ambassadors has offered consultations to the Biden White House on mental health and equity. I think that's dope. Y'all want to talk more about that? Because I feel like people really needs to know, like, the Biden White House on mental health.
Yeah, and we're lucky enough to have one of the people who actually presented with us today. Taylor, take it away.
Yes. So this was really a really important conversation. When I first got the opportunity to be able, to be surrounded by those who work closely with President Biden, it was really important for me, and it really touched my heart to be able to just for them to just extend the invite to me, for me to be able to come up and talk about kind of my experience with mental health and my community. So it was really it was kind of a lot of, how can I say this? Not so much backlash, but kind of just like questions raised around like, how it is in Baltimore City, how it is for the LGBTQ community that I'm a part of. So just kind of being able to express myself and talk about the importance of, having platforms for mental health to be, spotlighted and highlighted and how it shows up in our communities, and just talking about how youth can receive help and how people can extend their hand to us. So we feel more comfortable with going to those designated people in our community to talk about, how we are feeling or how our day was, just simple things like that. There were a lot of different people from a lot of different places there. So I didn't really get to talk a lot, but I did get to say a little piece that was that made a big impact. So that was really fun. Other opportunities, I have people that'll just come to me. I could be presenting on, I talk about self-care a lot. So I'm a self-care mogul. So I could be presenting on self-care, and somebody might direct message me on a Zoom meeting like, hey, I know you're in the Healing Youth Alliance. Do you mind coming to present about self-care and depression? So just being able to have Haya Ambassador by my name has brought me many, many opportunities and has allowed me to network with a lot of different people, a lot of different places, like I said before.
That's great. And we really do applaud Taylor and her growth and being in Haya. Like, Haya has really brought a whole lot of awareness, just not on mental health, but I feel like just being a part of Hyatt just made me more aware of my own mental health. And so I could be okay and share more about mental health to my peers. And so some other sample contracts is the Family League of Maryland, Baltimore City Health Department Thread, Methodist, churches and whatnot, and libraries, Department of Social Services, and the big one, Johns Hopkins University. Okay, someone wants to read the quote?
Sure, I can read it. So Hyatt is incredible because it genuinely allows for the experience as a Black person to be validated. All it takes is for someone to believe in you, and that single opportunity can take you so far in life. There's never a time where I don't feel welcome in Hyatt. The dedication and fairness is definitely evident. I cannot wait to see the great things we accomplish.
Amen. That quote really does show though.
And that quote is from one of our cohorts. I mean, one of our ambassadors that is in cohort 3.
So here are just a few of our funders. As you can see, the Baltimore City Health Department, of course, the lovely and great Black Mental Health Alliance, and BCF, and yeah, those are just a few. Okay, so Cam is on here. She's been dropping our tags, the Eventbrite for our upcoming event. Cam is also the founder of KR Smoothies, which she's about to make into a nonprofit, which we are so proud of her of. Her smoothies are banging. Also, Elder and Cam also have a business called Quarantine Delights, which was really a big success. Their food be banging. And so like a lot of the ambassadors have their own businesses, just like Taylor, Elder, and I have my own nonprofit called Not For Sale Youth, which is a human trafficking initiative. And so we also had Gemma. I don't think she's on this meeting, but she's super dope. And so we really have a real widespread of ambassadors from different age groups, ethnicities, nationalities, religion, and who also serve on different other youth projects. So there's more ambassadors, but this is just a few. Okay, Elder, you want to do the future of Hyatt?
Yeah, so proposals have been requested for replication in 5 additional sites. So we don't just want Healing Youth Alliance to be in Baltimore. Like she said, we're stretching out to Baltimore County, and we wanted to go further than that. 4 in Maryland, 1 mental health system, 2 governmental agencies, 1 community agency, 1 in Las Vegas, Nevada. Like I said, like mental health is more than just Baltimore. I know Baltimore needs it, but we want to make this example of what youth leadership, youth healing each other looks like, and we want to help spread that. So, Taylor, you want to add anything?
Yeah, definitely. So basically, Elder kind of gave a synopsis of this slide and everything, and like the future of us, but just making sure that we extend I keep saying extend the invite, but that's the best way to put it. Extending our invite to other youth who may want to be a part of Healing Youth Alliance, who may be like me. So Healing Youth Alliance was kind of like the missing puzzle piece to my puzzle, because as far as like mental health and mental health disorders, I already knew like the who and the what, but I didn't know the why. So like why these different disorders were showing up in my home or my schools or my community, or why I was reacting to a certain way. So there may be other youth in other cities, other countries, maybe, because High is definitely about to be global, but who may not know their why, or just may want to be a part of something like this. So yeah.
I don't think we can stress enough that youth mental health is so important nowadays, especially due to COVID and maybe possible family issues or just some internal issues. And we also don't want to forget, like, some of it is just psychological issues that can just be in us that we don't even have any knowledge on, that we just need to work on for ourselves. And some of them we can develop. And so that's what all the training is before we even go out, so we can learn. And so we can have a knowledge and understanding, just so we won't go out and claim false information. So the trainings is really sufficient. And of course, y'all already know we get trained from Heart Smiles, Black Mental Health Alliance, and University of Maryland School of Social Work.
And really quickly before we move on, it's so important, and we learn and talk a lot about this within Heart Smiles, but also Healing Youth Alliance. Peer-to-peer mentorship and peer-to-peer leadership is really so important, because a lot of times, especially in Baltimore City, we have a lot of conversations about the youth and what we want and what we should have without the youth being present at those conversations. So the fact that we're able to, this is for youth and by the youth, and we're able to speak for ourselves and actually have a voice in some of the conversations that we usually don't, is really important. So we look forward to expanding that as well to different organizations and just people on different platforms.
Okay, so this is a beautiful young lady who helped get us opportunities. And so this is her information if you want to learn more about Healing Youth Alliance, the ambassadors, if you want to schedule a meeting, find more information, what you can do, how to support, volunteer, whatever you're trying to look for. This is Miss Brandy. She is amazing. She is dope for real. She is on here. She just put on the chat. And so follow us on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube at Healing Youth Alliance. And remember that you are important and that you are born with purpose. Okay. And of course, I have to say, y'all are not for sale. Remember that. I just have to do it. It's me. But we really do appreciate you and everyone that's on here. We appreciate the work that you do for youth and just in the Baltimore City community. And we look forward to expanding Healing Youth Alliance. So again, thank you for letting us come on here and share more information.
Y'all drop some noise for these dynamic young people in the chat box. There were so many jewels that were just dropped in terms of youth leadership, youth advocacy, youth voice. That was real serious. Here's the best part. We're not finished hearing from these young people. Stay tuned. I told you I don't break out after the breakout room. Stay tuned. We're gonna hear some more from Taylor, Ania, and Elder in a little bit, as well as from Janine. Stay tuned. But next up, we're gonna take these spotlights off. But next up, we have some breakout rooms coming up where we want to get a little bit of conversation going. In the breakout room, please make sure that you, number one, introduce yourself, right? So that way we can get the networking thing going on. We're gonna be in these breakout rooms for about 13 minutes. But we want you guys to reflect on the following questions. Like, what was your biggest takeaway so far from what has been shared? Because again, we got some more conversation coming up. How can you implement or incorporate what you just heard just now at a high level with your work with young people? What was something that you heard that you didn't understand quite yet? And what's something that you want to research further? Again, this is not the end of the conversation. We're still going to have the panel conversation, but we wanted to insert this breakout room and opportunity to converse here early on, because again, a lot of information has already been shared. The last thing we want you all to think about is in the next section, we're going to be asking these young people questions. Formulate some questions in your breakout rooms that you want to ask of these young people, because guess what? We're putting them back in the hot seat as they serve. And I think Renee just said it in the chat box. They are now mentoring us. So I want that to sink in. These young people are mentoring us during this forum, because again, as we all know, all too often, we do not listen enough to our young people. And that is also what we want to do tonight. So breakout rooms coming at you. I think we're going 4 or 5 per breakout room. Please, again, introduce yourself, talk through these questions. We're going to drop these questions in the chat box as well. If we have not already, I will do that here in a second. I think Renee is going to do it, but then we're jumping into these. You got it, Renee?
Yeah, I'm going to drop it and then I'm going to open the rooms.
Do it.
Thank you all for being patient.
Don't break out after the breakout room. Stick around for the second part. Okay, folks, welcome back. Welcome back. Hopefully that was an amazing discussion. I told y'all it's like one of nature's new laws. People break out after the breakout rooms. I can't stress it enough. We got some people coming back though. Okay, shout out. Some of y'all are coming back. Boomerang style. We can't get rid of some of y'all. It's all love. Please, let's do popcorn, a couple of minutes worth of sharing what was talked about in the breakout rooms before we move into our panel discussion. Please, what was shared? And Renee just reminded us as well, please drop your thoughts or questions for our panelists, right, which we're getting ready to move into in a little bit, please also drop those in the chat box.
I just like to say, and first of all, peace, Sadiq. I just want to say that in our group, it was just a continuation of the wisdom nuggets that that these young people were dropping. I've always been told, and I've always learned that wisdom comes with physical miles, age, but these young people, they're speaking from a level of wisdom that is uncommon and unusual. Anaya McNair, she was really, it's just so refreshing to see young people leading from the front and being inspirational to us as adults. And I presume that's probably what happened in all of these groups, but that's certainly what happened in our group. So I just want to shout out Anaya and shout out every one of these young people that are on here providing inspiration. It's a pleasant surprise, and I'm sure everyone probably feels the same.
Powerful, brother. Really, really appreciate that, and it's a blessing to see you as well. But again, I so appreciate that. Like, the only thing I would add is like, man, that should be part of our like protocol to look for that wisdom every single day.
Exactly.
Awesome. So we got some raised hands. Penelope, please.
Hi. So they asked me to speak. I said no, but I think I should. I've been talking all day, so excuse my voice a little hoarse. We had some things on the legislative floor that it's like it was a long day. But in our group, I'll bullet point this. So it started out with one, again, commending our young people. This is an awesome session because it's a session about young people, guided by young people. Because you want answers on how to help young people, you need to ask them, right? That was our first point. The second one was getting to the root of what the mental health issues are or could be and where they're coming from, which, well, I don't want to make it my platform, but our national legislation group, and the point that I was trying to make in our group is we do have data that shows our fragmented system. And there are some things we want on the floor about the root of this problem with mental health, especially with the issues going on here in the Southeast with the 7 schools that received the bomb threats from another youth. Okay, so what is the actual root of the problem? I'm from Cuba, and one of the participants had wanted to know, well, how do you address it in my own family? Because as a Afro-Latina woman with 6 sons, I pray a lot differently because my sons are targets as soon as they walk out that door. And our home base is their grounded resource of strength, and it's cultural. And now how do we address it here in America where we have such a fragmented system, where our educational system is not set up for learning, it's not set up to train, it is set up for industry. And on our legislative floor, a lot of people don't realize that has never changed from the 1800s. Our school systems are not set up to teach learning, they're set up for industry to create government workers. And that's one of the things that I personally believe needs to change, which is why stay on the national legislation, stay on the floor, that's what I do best is talk, and I can hold that floor forever. I don't want to hold this thing as I held that floor for 12 hours. We have a misconception about time. Every day has only 24 hours in it. Think about this. 12 hours a day, 12 hours a night, period.
Yeah, no,
our system from the beginning begins the root of the problem, which I showed cause on the floor today, which we won. The mental health issues start back in Head Start. They start back in pre-K. Why are you carry a child for 9 months, you take them, then, oh, let's shove them out the door as soon as we can. Why do we do that? Because America is set up for industry. It is set up for work. That is not a normal growth and development pathway for a child. So what the data showed today was by the time they hit third and fourth grade, we've already got a prison pipeline because we done pushed our kids out the door from birth. And that was something I think we should think about. So I'll stop there.
Yeah, no.
That's where we ran out of. We had 7 seconds left.
Yeah, no. It's powerful. And again, I want to hold that for a moment because I think this is a great segue. If we can hear from maybe one more of the breakout rooms, this is a great segue right into our discussion. So that way, again, we have the benefit of hearing directly again from some of our practitioners as well as our young people. I think all of what you just spoke about can and should be addressed, and we're starting to see some chat box questions as well. If there's anybody else that wanted to share briefly from the breakout rooms, and then we can move into the panel discussion. All right, let's bring these young people back up to the front, Renee. Let's do it. Please, drop your questions, your comments for these young people in the chat box. We're gonna start this conversation up because again, this is really what y'all came for. It ain't to hear me, it ain't to hear Renee. So bring it back to the front of the room. We got young Elder, we got Taylor, we got Ania, we got Miss Janine. And we're getting ready to jump into this conversation. Y'all feeling good? Y'all still with us? All right, audience, y'all still with us? Drop a 1 in the chat box if we still alive, and ready for this conversation. Okay, awesome, let's do it. So listen, we're gonna jump right into these questions. Y'all have already been a blessing, I think, to so many of us this evening and throughout the course of this time together. We're just gonna keep that love train rolling. And again, encourage folks, right? And that's why earlier, this idea of accepting non-closure, this is just the beginning of the conversation, y'all. This is just the beginning of the conversation. The real work happens with what we do after this conversation and what we do with the resources and the tidbits and these nuggets and these jewels that this group of panelists is going to present us with. So I just want to lay that out there as well. So we've already covered a couple of these already, just in terms of, again, we've gotten a little bit of an overview in terms of what BMHA does, what HIA does, which was beautiful. But I'd love if we could open up the panel with the question of, why do y'all think the emphasis on Black youth mental health is so important as opposed to just youth mental health, right? Like, why is it important for us to, as they say, disaggregate or pull out the Black youth aspect of mental health and mental wellness for this conversation?
I think this is a great question, but that definitely touches back to when I was saying that we received training and we learned about historical trauma. So most of the things that Black youth experience are historical. It's in us, it's in our bloodline. It's trauma that our ancestors have experienced and it's still on us. And the traumatic experiences that we experience in the Black community are far worse. I'm not going to say worse, because no trauma at all is worse than any trauma. All trauma is valid and it's all horrible. But the trauma that we experience in the Black community is consistent. It's every day. Every day a Black youth could experience a new traumatic experience. So just being able to focus in on that and going straight to the youth, because they're not going to just come to us, because the things that we are experiencing, like I said, are historical. So some people don't even understand the things that they're going through. So it's definitely really important for us to go to them and give them all of the resources that they need so that they can figure out, you know, what might be going on inside their head or inside their mind and their body.
I agree. And to kind of piggyback off, oh, I'm sorry, Anita.
No, cool.
Yeah, but to kind of piggyback off of what Elder was saying, this might sound crazy, but African Americans never received healing, right? So kind of talking about historical trauma coming from slavery down to police brutality, segregation, just those different things that African Americans went through. We never received healing for them. Nobody ever came to us and said, hey, hear therapists. Instead, we have, school counselors in our schools who don't look like us, who come and ask us a bunch of questions. And when we open up to them about what we may be going through or how we're feeling, it's always, oh, you're suicidal, or you're crazy, you need to go to a psych ward, or, so a lot of times we talk about like how can we be of help? Well, not even youth. How can adults be of help to youth as far as mental health and things like that? I would first say, and this may be getting a little bit off topic, but I would first say meeting youth where they are and then helping them to get where they're trying to go. A lot of times we can come into different spaces and different environments and kind of apply ourselves and kind of force ourselves on youth. But a lot of times youth, for one, won't open up to you if you do that. And then for two, it's kind of weird, right? Because you're kind of invading our space. We understand what you're here for, but it's like, who are you really? Like, what are your intentions? How can you be of help to me? What experiences do you have that I can relate to? And I think that's one of the really important things about Healing Youth Alliance that we use is we talk about our experiences, right? So a lot of times what we've been through, a lot of youth that don't know about mental health disorders or mental health are going through those same exact things. So being able to use our experiences to relate to them is definitely a great gateway to kind of open up conversations about mental health and things like that.
I think it's just simply understanding the culture of how African-American trauma happened. Like Taylor said, the whole process of being taken away from our homeland and then not having our own name and not knowing the purpose of who we are because we had a set purpose for what they wanted us to be, which was work. And so by having that trauma from being slaves, we're in this work mentality, like we're not our own person because we was considered not even half of a person. And so understanding that Black men already have two strikes against them. One just being Black, second just them being male. And if you're already part of the LGBTQ, that's another strike against you, especially us as being African-American females as well. And so that's also a strike against us as well. And so I think, and then I don't want to get too much into it, but understand the importance of learning about family violence. It goes way back there. That trauma can happen within the house Black code. We got to get away from the stereotype. What happens in the house stays in the house. We have to break away from that because I need to express myself, acknowledging that like, no, my trauma happened within the house. And so I can't get help within the house. I need an outlet. And sometimes those outlets are not in those communities. And so especially for in public education, I think Ms. Penelope, if I'm saying her name correctly, she brought up that. And so like originally African Americans wasn't allowed to go to school. We couldn't read, we couldn't write. Education was taken away from us. Originally they built agricultural schools because they wanted us to learn how to farm. That was the main thing because we had to work the land. So really just understanding that historical trauma, back to what Elder and Taylor said, that's where it really all begins. And like Taylor said, meeting us where we at. Sometimes we don't even know where we at. And so when I talk about it, sometimes you got to learn us and talk to us because we can be telling you things without even talking. Our body language speaks for itself. What we write, English class, when we learn certain things, what we write, we're telling you something. Sometimes we're not even writing about the book. We're expressing ourselves through writing. And so that's also when it comes into educational system, learn us through what we're telling y'all. Sometimes it's through art, sometimes through music, sometimes through poetry, sometimes it's just like simple as talking, but just really going back to that historical trauma. And I'm gonna let Mr. Go ahead, extra.
Janine, please jump in if you like
Well
to add
said,
anything.
Anaya, well said.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate all of you.
Wow. Janine, you want to jump in, please?
Sure. I appreciate what has been lifted up. I think simply because, like for me, as far as oftentimes Black people are just unseen. The circumstances that we are experiencing do create dynamics where we might feel unseen. And it is important to address the mental health and supports. And Taylor, you had mentioned something about how when you share things, sometimes you're mislabeled as in different ways. And I do want to lift up that during the times of chattel enslavement, when Black individuals wanted to seek freedom, it was believed that there was a mental health issue. And so the issue is steeped really deeply in chattel enslavement. And so also it's not just the historical things that are happening, it's the things that are happening even now. Pieces of legislation that are being brought forth to try to combat the fact that juveniles or youth, excuse me, are being interviewed by law enforcement, right? So right now there's legislation on the books to try to prevent law enforcement from being able to. The Baltimore Algebra Project, and it's another organization, excuse me, if the folks on the call know, please share it. They're supporting legislation that Senator Carter has brought forth, where juveniles, your parents have to be notified within reasonable time. So that's very important as well, that we need to keep in mind of those things. It's not just historical, it's what's happening now. It's not, it's all forms of political apartheid that are creating these containers that are bringing forth socially engineered traumas that Black children and Black families are subjugated to. And so when people ask, like, how do we support Black youth? You can listen to the Black youth, but if you dismiss the vessel that Black youth came from, such as the Black woman or the Black man, that's equally as much of a problem. So it's not just about hearing them, right? Programs might be there because there's an absence of supports and services in their community, but let's unpack why that community doesn't have that service in that community. Because when we think about the Black Panther movement, those things were in the community. So what things extracted it from the community where it's not there, and then other programs come in an attempt to save and protect and do and support Black children, but the community is fully capable, but what is inhibiting their ability to do? So I think that's equally as important while we focus on mental health for Black children.
Can I say something about that? And it's just literally one statement. Read the 13th Amendment. That's it. Just read the 13th Amendment. And it starts right there. That's it. The 13th Amendment. And that's all.
Because
Wow.
it's a systemic problem, and you're absolutely correct.
Wow.
And as God say, I would agree with some of what you're saying, that since I am on that national legislative floor, there are systemic issues that, like these young people have said, come from not just slavery, even pre-slavery in the United States, moving forward up to through now. We're addressing the police issues and how they are attacking our youth. And we really need to understand, like you said, where it comes from. A lot of what people don't understand is the police force was built off of GS4 or G4S. And Mr. Ali, it would be great if we could, invite Angela Davis. And she is just wonderful. To give us some more in-depth. I was adopted when I came here, but she was the lady that raised me last. They were friends. And the wealth of knowledge that comes from those who had to walk through this. When you had to walk through the colored and white signs here, when you had colored days to shop, white days to shop, you had to walk on this side of the street, not that side of the street. And the systemic impact of mental health from generation to generation that is affecting our youth. That is affecting our police force.
Thank you so much.
Right.
We definitely want to reserve some more time to hear from the young people. Please, if there are comments, if we can reserve those for the chat box, we want to do our best to try to protect this time to get as much to hear as much from our young people as possible. Thank you so much for those comments. But please, utilize the chat box if we can, and we're going to address those questions as they come in. But again, I just want to highlight several of those points that were so amazing just now from all of you all, not to rehash them, but there was one in particular that again, just struck me, this idea of, again, doing the individual work to understand the historical context, to understand the culture, where I think two big pieces that were lifted up several times, as well as this idea, I think it was Taylor, right? Like, what are your intentions? What are our collective intentions as adults in seeking to work with young people, especially our young Black people that have gone through all manner of situations and trauma? But, I think so many adults, they come through this they come with this savior lens, right? Like we here to fix y'all, or right, we here to make y'all great, and it's just crazy talk, as opposed to, I think that so many adults haven't come to grips with their own mental health challenges, and we look to experiment on young people. So we're not there to share who we are. So that's what that comment made me think of. Is like, adults, we need to come with our vulnerabilities. We need to come and be prepared to share, not just have, young people just pour into us and tell us everything that's wrong so we can try to fix it. But some of us need to be fixed as well. So you just made me think of that. We're gonna keep rolling. What would you all, there's been a lot of talk so far about relationships. And we saw that through what Renee shared earlier in terms of, protective factors versus risk factors. The same people that can help us, right, and support us the most can harm us and hurt us the most. So I wanted to hear from each of you all, like, what do healthy supportive relationships look like to you all? And that could be from adult to youth, or also youth to youth. What are some examples of, or what would you all share about healthy relationships in the context of great mental health?
I can start. And speaking from peer-to-peer relationships and communications and things like that, it has to be a two-way street. A lot of times youth can surround themselves around people who don't look like what they want to be, aren't going where they want to go, and can kind of bring them down a lot of times, or they can fall into peer pressure and kind of surround themselves around things that they wouldn't usually do. And that can also be traumatic and create environments where it's not healthy. And like I was saying earlier, can become toxic. So it has to be a two-way street, making sure the support is there, making sure they're checking on each other, making sure each person feels comfortable enough to go into one another and expressing how they feel, how their day went, and just being able to be vulnerable and open about, what they're going through, and also being of help. So I may have networks or talk to people that Elder may not have. So just expressing to her and kind of extending my background and my experiences and my, connections that I have to her, and then likewise from her.
I can go next. I feel like, just as far as somebody in the chat definitely said extraordinary listening skills. I'm not sure who said that, but definitely want to raise that comment. Extraordinary listening skills are very important. It's really important to listen more than you talk. When it comes to trying to figure out your problems, nobody wants somebody who's just telling them like, "Oh, I told you so," or "You should have listened to me." We need patience, we need grace, and we need empathy, and that comes from adults and youth. Youth have to learn to have grace with each other, and adults have to learn how to have grace with not only just other adults, but youth as well. Be patient and just be willing to find a way to give constructive criticism in a way that it doesn't tear somebody down, so that they understand, okay, these are the things I have to work on. These are the areas that I need help with, instead of feeling like, oh man, I'm just a bad person. So I think I say that.
I agree. And really quickly, I always bring this up in any of the presentations that I do about mental health or about self-care. I think it's funny because learning and working with Healing Youth Alliance, I kind of had to unteach myself a lot of things that were taught to me, not even purposefully, but just watching, the adults around me and my teachers and things like that, but just certain stuff that can be said, or like things that we are used to saying that really shouldn't be said. So for example, something as simple as like, if a youth comes to an adult saying, I may be going through something, or I don't feel well, or I'm stressed out, a lot of times adults can say, well, you're only this age, you don't pay bills, you don't go through anything. That is not true at all. We are human. Life is hard itself. Life doesn't come with a manual, it doesn't come with instructions. Yes, we have adults who have, been through certain things that we haven't quite reached yet, but we still go through things ourselves. School, now the pandemic. So we have a lot that is affecting our mental health that we need to talk about. So that is one of the things that I kind of feel like has made youth not want to open up to adults, just by, adults telling us you aren't going through anything, or, just be quiet. So not being able to express ourselves has really destroyed some of the relationships between adults and youth. So I think definitely opening up a way, having a way for youth to open up to you, and just like I said, having that two-way street where youth feel comfortable coming to you and expressing themselves.
I also think like authority abuse has been an issue. Like people who have authority use that over youth. Like, no, you listen to me, you come to me. Like, but then that closes off like a door because of your authority. I respect you and who you are and what you do, but yeah, most definitely, yeah, adultism. And so like that's really like an issue. And I think that like for a certain point in my life, I didn't trust police officers. Every time I would see a police officer, I would literally cry because they make me feel so unsafe. And it's supposed to be the opposite. Like you're supposed to make me feel safe because I have a thing about guns. So that's what will make me cry, because like, how are you going to use that? I can't come to you because that can be used on me inappropriately. And it has been inappropriately used on a whole lot of African-American folks. And also, I feel like learning each other's needs, because youth can help adults and adults can help youth. So communicating like, yes, I'm here because I want to learn how to communicate better. Yes, I'm telling you I have mental health issues, but I'm coming in here with a non-judgment. This is non-judgmental. I could talk to you and you can talk to me because we can share both of our experiences and it can help each other out. Just having like a simple, like learning each other, like learning who we are as an individual. What do we like to do? And like the number one question you have to ask yourself, who are you? If you don't know your purpose, you can't help someone else find their purpose, especially with a youth who doesn't know their purpose yet. And you're trying to help theirs when you're still struggling to find yours. You could be people work in places where they don't even feel like they're even doing it justice. I don't want someone like that. I don't want someone that I can't have faith in because they don't have faith in themselves. And so I need someone who can stand firm in who they are and stand firm into their purpose. If you're just doing this for a check, then this ain't for you. Because social work, therapy, all that is a healing work. You have to be in it to heal. You have to heal yourself and you have to be willing to help other people heal. And if you're in with that, then you got to go. It just won't work. And I think that's where people bump heads a lot, because like, you don't understand me. And then people don't want to even try to understand you. Easily frustration, passive aggression, like you can't do that. So I think that healthy and non-healthy kind of, it won't work. So just knowing and setting boundaries as well. Like, because you don't want to overcross boundaries, and it's also like understanding your triggers as well. And learning the other person triggers. So I think most definitely accountability. What's his Jacquees? Yes. So I'm gonna stop right there. Miss Janine, do you want to speak on that?
Really quickly. I'm sorry, Miss Janine.
No.
I just feel like back to the two-way street thing, communication, y'all, a lot of times adults always come to youth for help with social media or help with y'all phones, or y'all don't know how to do something. We have a lot more to us than just, the newer stuff or what youth, are used to in social media and stuff. Come to us and talk to us about politics, mental health, extend that invite about other conversations and other topics that we all go through in life, that we all see. We have a lot more knowledge to us than just, technology and how do I take the battery out my phone? So, just have other conversations with us besides those.
How do I take the battery out of my phone?
That sounds a lot like respect, Taylor. And it was like so stereotypical and accurate. Please, Janine.
So as you all shared, it makes me think about, like, for me, my faith is big as a believer in Christ, and a child shall lead them, right? And so when we embrace what that means, we can be in community, and there can be bi-directional learning that takes place for the greater good of our community and all of humanity. What I also want to lift up as you ask this question, Sadiq, is sometimes with programs, we have metrics and things we have to measure. And so we can't be so caught up in wanting children to talk to us or trying to figure out, how do I get this child to open up? It's a person, it's not an object. And so we have to embrace that, and we have to respect that. And we cannot force people to address what we think is depression. Don't go around being Dr. Google, right? And thinking that you can just diagnose someone with depression or anxiety because behaviors look the same, when really sometimes it's just a response to a traumatic lived experience. And so I think that's what I would say. Bidirectional learning, a child shall lead them. Sometimes people are not ready to heal, and sometimes people don't need you to facilitate their healing. Maybe your program serves a purpose in getting that young person additional resources, but you're not supposed to help them with their mental health. Maybe that needs to come from internally in their community, because sometimes it can. And sometimes we're receiving services, or people are receiving services. I say this as someone who, I grew up in Baltimore City. And so I went to Forest Park High School, and that is a zone school. That's not a citywide high school. So you got certain type, it was a different ball game in Forest Park than it was at some other schools, right? And I was also in a program called the Futures Program, and that was for, air quotes, at-risk youth. And so although I stand before you as an adult in this moment, I can still speak to what my experience was like as a child in Baltimore City, growing up in Zone 15 and going to Forest Park. So I think understanding that we're people, right? And again, because we're talking about Black mental health, so often Black vessels are objectified and these entities that need to be treated a certain way. So yield to maybe someone doesn't want to talk. And also understand that counseling and therapy, there's a traditional way to get supports and services, but you might want to do art. Might want to do poetry. I think, is it Do More Baltimore? I'm probably saying it wrong. Does like poetry, and My Mind is Mental Health, or poetry and art, is something like that. And so there's so many different ways. Do more, be more. Thank you. So there's so many different ways that we can address the mental health and wellness for people. So that's what I wanted to put on the table.
No, again, that was so beautiful. And I think you directly answered one of the questions that we received from the audience, right? Which was, they have a youth that is shy and won't express their emotions. How can I break the ice? I think you just hit the nail exactly in the head. Potentially there's other ways for them to express themselves except for just verbally. Perhaps it's not you that's meant to break the ice with them. Perhaps there is something else that young person is going on, or was going on with them. And I also saw in the chat box, it's also staying the course and being patient. This is not, this is not a 15-minute thing. And I think a lot of times as adult practitioners, again, our ego is bruised very often when young people rebuff us or they slow to respond. We take it personal. Which makes it all about us, instead of understanding that everybody going through something, especially right now these days, our young people. And I think, again, we just have to have a more patient perspective, a longer range view. So I wanted to throw that out there. And again, I just wanted to give 2 snaps, 2 claps to this idea. Again, Taylor, you banged them. And I hope folks are taking notes that young people are experts at more than being young. That's what I heard Taylor say. I hope we wrote that down. Young people, I'm gonna say that again for everybody in the back. Young people are experts at more and have more expertise than just being young. And the more that we can tap into that, is what I'm hearing from Taylor, the better off we're all gonna be. Y'all are dropping jewels. Let us know y'all alive in the chat box. Give them some love, y'all. Give them some love. Taylor, let me stay on you for a little bit. I wanted to bring this back up. I just thought this was a beautiful point. Correct me if I'm wrong. You talked about self-care earlier. And from what I understand, you are the self-proclaimed self-care guru. So please, right, like share for the audience in your own words, and then passing it to the rest of the panel, like what does self-care mean to you and look like? But also, again, how can adults, our program folks, our adult practitioners, our mentors, how can they encourage self-care among young people, especially our young Black youth?
Yeah, that's a great question. And self-care is me. I am self-care. Self-care is really important to me, only because of the things that I've been through, the experiences that I've been through, and then working closely with Healing Youth Alliance, it kind of reminded me to plug myself back up. So I don't know if you guys are into like signs and things like that, but I'm a Capricorn. So I really go by that a lot, and I apply that to my life. So I'm like a go-getter. I'm a goal getter. And I'm also a hustler. So I'm always, thinking about money and how I can not only help my community, but help myself as well, financially, and just making sure I'm okay. But I say that to say I do a lot within my community. So I'm always applying myself to different organizations, seeing where I can help. And sometimes I can get like really burnt out, and that can cause me to either isolate myself, not want to talk to anybody. I may fall short in some things. I might miss a meeting, which is okay because in life those things happen. But it's not okay if it happens continuously and you're not doing anything about it. So moments that where I have burnouts or where I feel like I'm just overdrained or overwhelming myself, self-care is my go-to. And self-care can be different for a lot of different youth. It's not always, spending money or getting a massage. Sometimes it could be scrolling on TikTok for an hour. Like that right there can be my self-care. And a lot of times adults can kind of attack youth when it comes to social media. Just saying things like, I could fall down the steps. I remember when I was younger, like that was a big problem in my house, and I could fall down the steps. Oh, well, it's because you were in your phone so much, you fell down the steps. No, I fell down the steps because I tripped on the shoe that was on the staircase, so just like things like that. And not being so, how can I put it, hard on youth when it comes to social media, because sometimes that could be our outlet, and that could be a platform for us for different things, businesses, talking to other youth who may be going through what we're going through, and different things like that. So again, it can show up in different forms. Like I said, social media, painting, Janine, and I think Ania brought it up earlier, musicians. I'm an artist as well. So not only do I do graphic design, but I do accent walls. So painting helps me to express myself. And a lot of different projects that I'm on, one of them being Voices on Vax. That's a small program that we came up with to bring information to youth on the vaccine and just provide them with information on how they can get the vaccine, and different things like that. So being able to do graphic designing for them and come up with some of the different templates and the Instagram posts has allowed me to express myself, and kind of apply mental health to, how can I say it? I guess the doctor field, and kind of talking about medical and healthcare providers and stuff like that, because that also is a part of our historical trauma, the Tuskegee Project, things like that. So just using different things that we're on, and different people to express ourselves. And I think one way that adults can help youth as far as self-care, first of all, apply it. A lot of youth don't know what self-care is or how to practice self-care. So just reminding them that sometimes we do need to take 5 minutes to ourselves. Or if you're ever having a conflict with the youth or having a conversation and it may go left, or youth may not be opening up to you, or responding in the way that you want them to respond. Just maybe they need to take a moment to themselves, or just asking questions. What do you need? How are you feeling? How was your day? Just simple things like that is a part of self-care, because not only are they expressing to you how they feel, but they're expressing to themselves and acknowledging how they feel in that present moment or overall in that day. So definitely just bringing awareness to self-care, practicing it yourself. Sometimes adults can take 5 minutes away from whatever environment they're in. Practice it within that same environment. Like, even though it may be a lot of noise around you, just journaling or taking notes to acknowledge yourself and be aware of how you're feeling can show youth and those around you how important it is to kind of take a break and kind of plug ourselves back up. Does that make sense?
I got it. Look, I'm taking notes. I hope everybody else is. Model self-care adults. Give permission and normalize self-care. Check in.
I just wanted to touch on one thing that she said about self-care, because self-care is really important. Especially she said she worked real hard and sometimes she get burnt out. And a lot of times with people with big hearts, we pour so much that we forget to feed ourselves. And a lot of times people think that self-care is taking a walk or working out. And in reality, working out can be a form of self-care, but it's also kind of ironic. It's an ironic way of thinking, because you're focusing on the outside of your body and how you look on the outside, but you're not focusing on what's broken on the inside. So you got to do both. It's a process, and self-care don't look the same for everybody. You feel me? My sister got me this book for Christmas called Take Care of Your Type. It's 9 different Enneagram types, like different types of people. Like, it's the idealist, the helper, the achiever, the individualist, the observer, the loyalist, the enthusiastic, the challenger and the peacemaker. I just picked this book up today, so I'm still trying to figure out like which one I am. I think I'm the helper. So, you just had to look it up. You had to find out who you are and what type of stuff you need for yourself to make sure you're taking care of yourself the way that you need to be taking care of yourself, because it's so easy to take care of other people, especially for a helper like me. They say that helpers like taking care of other people, and they yearn for people to say thank you. That, I appreciate you. And if you're not taking care of yourself, you always focus on other people saying thank you to you, and they not saying it. Now you feel like you're not as whole as you should be. So that's just a small example, but just getting to know who you are so you can make sure that you're taking care of yourself the way that you need to.
I feel like for as a youth who's still trying to understand self-care, and I think I have to be honest and not come in here and lie to y'all that I don't practice self-care like how I should. And I think that's the first step, being transparent with yourself and acknowledging, where you need to step in. And I am burnt out, and I think I'm on my way to being back okay. And I am trying to do self-care. And today was a hard day for me before this meeting started. If I'm being honest, it took me a very long time for me just to get up out of the bed. And again, self-care really does look better, different than anyone. Some people might say sleeping is a form of self-care, where sleeping for me can't be a self-care because I know where that can put me in a place mentally. So, in being careful with self-care, and what you do realize that can be the complete opposite for others, or how it can be a trauma response for youth or adults as well. So I just had to put that out there, and just being transparent that I'm not big on self-care for myself at this moment. So I'm taking notes as well from this panel and from the adults who are speaking, and putting stuff in this chat that I might use later on in the evening or in the couple weeks to come. So I really do appreciate. I just clicked the link for the Amazon book. So with college and whatnot, I have like 8 books, but I'm gonna make sure I put that on my list so I can work on myself as well. Because if I'm not okay in my head, I most definitely won't perform well in school, and school is a priority for me. So I appreciate you, Taylor, Elda, Miss Jenny, and the people who was dropping some jewels in the chat. It's really helping me a lot.
Yeah, I really appreciate everything that has been shared. And as you all, Elda, Taylor, and Naya, as you all have shared, you keep emphasizing youth. And it takes me back to earlier when we talk about the adultification of Black children, right? And so if we eradicate this adultifying of Black children, then we can tap into treating them and interacting with them based off of who they are, right? As children, as youth, right? And so often for Black children, that essence of their innocence is robbed from them, and they sometimes don't get to do those types of things that really ingrain in them on how to take care of themselves. So I think it's important, as folks are, the other providers on the call, you're working to figure out how to encourage the youth that you service to take better care of themselves. Make sure that you're not seeing them through a lens older than what they really are. So that's what I would also put out on the table. And the other thing is also within the Black community, there is this notion sometimes of just working and working and working and working and doing. And I think it's even more intense for Black females. We just go, we just go, we just go. And we're often viewed as these vessels that don't need a break. We don't need support. We don't need help. And I think that so often that contributes to other physiological health ailments that plague the Black female body as well. So I just wanted to put that out there because that's what came up for me as all the panelists were sharing. So
I think you just really downplayed that comment, Miss Janine. Like, you just cannot say, like, bro, that is so true. And I just realized that, like, man, as I like living, like, okay, every household is different. And so like my household, like my father's son, he worked, but then he was ended up on disability because he got hurt on the job. Then my mom was the like breadwinner, and like moving those gender roles as well. Like, the man doesn't always have to be the breadwinner of the house. Like, like getting away from, like, I hate calling it old school days, but it kind of is, where women have just like the take care of the home. Like, no, I want to do something for myself, but really I find that within myself as well. Like, I always had to find a stream of income. Like now it's just me and my dad because my mom unfortunately passed away. So like now I had to be that breadwinner. Now I had to go find multiple jobs. I had to bring money to the, like I had to pay these bills. So like I'm focusing on that. And I think that's the reason why I'm like all over the place. And like I don't take care of me how I'm supposed to take care of me. And like Taylor said, like that burnout is so real. And then sometimes you don't even realize you burnt out because you just working yourself literally to death. And people do that. I hope y'all realize people really do work themselves to death. It might not be on their death certificate, but it's true. Like it's sad that people really work themselves to death where it causes health issues. At this point, it's mental health, but health issues like diabetes, high blood pressure, like, and working yourself to death, PTSD, because at that point, you just work it to survive. And you can't do that. Like you can't work to survive. That's not life. You need to enjoy life. People dying early, and I don't think people realize that people are dying in their 30s and their 40s. You blessed to even make it to 70. It's sad. People are literally dropping dead because they're working to survive, especially within the Black community. Especially if you only working like you working and you in poverty and you can't even make enough for you to get out of poverty. Some people working having a poverty mindset. Like this is all that I can and this is all that I can get. Nah. But people are really working themselves to death. And I think we have to realize that too.
Listen, y'all. We almost out of time. I do not want to cut this conversation off, y'all. Please understand, I do not want to cut this conversation off. I know, again, speaking of self-care, folks got to get to their dinner. They got to get to their kids. Give them one thing on the way out, Taylor. We're going to go around this amazing panel. Drop some love. Don't log off yet until y'all fill out this evaluation that Renee's getting ready to drop. Do not log off yet until you complete that evaluation, until you hear this closing words from each of our, again, just amazing panelists for this evening. Taylor, give them one thing real quick. Give them one thing on your way out. We're going to go around and then we out of here.
I would definitely say, and you all may have heard this before, but if you see something, say something, especially talking about how mental health disorders can show up in different ways, whether it's characteristic traits or behavioral issues, or, just in general. If you see someone may need help, or if it looks like they're in the, I saw a question earlier talking about someone's environment and that how they can't get out of their environment. Just extending help where help is needed. Don't go, forcing it, but just like I said earlier, meeting youth where they are and then connecting them to where they want to be. And make sure y'all practice self-care too, because the work that we're all doing, we definitely need to practice self-care.
Adult practitioners practice self-care because our young people know when we're not. Elder, give them one thing on the way out.
So what I would say is lead with love. That goes for youth and adults too, because like you said, healing is not a 15-minute process. And a lot of times we get mentors who get in the job and then they find out that it's a lot harder than they realize. This youth is not taking my advice. They're not listening to me. They taking their own way, but you got to lead with love, and you got to understand that everybody needs love. And at the end of the day, love can sometimes be the answer to everything. Just giving people extra love, letting them know that you care and you understand what they're going through and you here for them. I think that's the key. That's what I would say to everybody. Lead with love.
Miss Ania, thank you, Elder.
Honestly, if y'all don't remember anything from this event, I would just say be gentle with yourselves and that y'all not Superman and you can't go in there with a superhero mentality like you can save everyone, because you can't. And be patient as well. Not everything is going to be on your time. And understand how a youth decision is not always your fault. And so don't always, if you know you did everything in your power that you can help that youth, do not always take accountability for their actions. You only have so much control. At this point, it's their life and you being there as a support system. So be gentle with yourselves. And I'm gonna just say this, I had a youth who my mom was working with that we was all close with. She was on her way back to life and she got killed. Body threw over somewhere and my mom felt completely horrible about it. But it wasn't her fault. So it's not your fault for someone or that youth decision or if something happens to that youth. You did everything that you can. So be gentle with yourselves.
It's powerful. Ms. Janine, take us home.
Yeah, I would say that addressing mental health for Black youth, it's a macro level issue as well. And so examine your policies and your practices to determine whether or not you all are more hell-bent on maintaining order as opposed to moving towards justice. So that's what I would leave you with. Examine your practices and your policies.
Make some noise in this chat box for these ladies. Please make some noise in this chat box. Give us your favorite emoji. I need to see a lot of flames. I need to see a lot of fists, a lot of lightning, a lot of, you know what I mean? A lot of muscle arms, a lot of claps. Thank you, Camry. Thank you, Ayana. If you can't get to them emojis, because again, we know some of y'all old, just drop a 1 in the chat box if you got something out of this. They already said y'all don't know how to work the phones, y'all. Just drop a 1 in the chat box. Just drop a 1 in the chat box. You don't know where the emojis at. Don't worry about it. We just a non-judgment zone. There we go. See the ones coming a lot faster, y'all. There we go. Hey, sincere thank you from the Mentor Maryland DC team. Next slide, Renee. We got some resources here. We're going to send these slides out. Again, please take your event survey. We have another amazing conversation coming up. It's actually myself, Renee, and Dayon from our team. Our show is back on the road, talking again, culturally relevant best practices from mentoring Black youth. Again, we're not stopping these conversations. It's Black History Month. We're going to keep it blackety black, as they say, and making sure that we're doing that with purpose and intention as well. Because again, this is about incrementally improving our practice. So please join us for that session on Friday, February the 25th. Complete your survey. And listen, we just talked about this quote, y'all. Listen, ain't no coincidences. We just talked about self-care. We ended on that. And this whole idea of taking care of ourselves, taking care of each other. This is not self-indulgent. This is not being extra. This is survival, y'all. And we need to be our best in order to do our best. So much love to everybody. Have a great evening. Shout out to, again, the Y for helping to sponsor this amazing session. HIA, Hitler Youth Alliance, our team at Mentor Maryland, DC, as well as Black Mental Health Alliance. Much love to everybody. Have a great evening.
Sadiq, can I say one last thing? I just want to thank the Healing Youth, the ambassadors. I just want to thank y'all. I appreciate how you all have poured into me on this evening. So may you continue to be blessed and prosper in everything you do.
Thank you for having us and allowing us into this space.
Yes, likewise. Thank you all.
Thank you,
Thank y'all.
everyone.
Thank y'all.